Hello, friends. I'm the Reverend Terry Peterson, minister of St. John's in Guruk. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of February. It is Ash Wednesday today, the beginning of the season of Lent. The word Lent actually has its roots in the word for spring. So, in a strange way, even though Lent is often seen as quite a dark season, it's actually, of course, happening for those of us in the northern hemisphere in springtime when life is beginning to return, or perhaps at least think about beginning to return. I can see from my window just the first shoots of daffodils coming up through the earth. So I know that spring is on its way. And that is a part of what Lent is about, is preparing for new life at Easter. Lent is a season of penitence, which does mean that it's a season of confession, of saying that we are sorry, that we have been wrong. But more importantly, it's a season of returning to the life that God has called us to, of returning our focus to where it ought to be, on Christ and following his way. So sometimes people ask, why do we need to have a season of penitence when every Sunday we have a prayer of confession? And that's an excellent question, because it's true that we should always be admitting our failures and constantly throughout the year, throughout our lives, striving to keep our focus on Christ's way. But it is also true that the year and our lives go in a sort of cycle, in a rhythm, and sometimes we need a special focus on one thing or another. And so this season of preparation for Easter is a time when we put a special focus on our own way of following Jesus in his journey to the cross and beyond to the empty tomb. And that traditionally has meant a season of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So there are sort of three different aspects to putting right our relationship with God. By prayer, by increasing our focus on our communication with God, both our listening and our speaking. Almsgiving, increasing our focus on how we share the love of God with those in need around us, and making sure that we are participating in God's justice, ensuring that everyone has access to abundant life. And by fasting, which is a way of disciplining ourselves, whether our body, our mind, or our spirit, depending on what we might choose to fast from, disciplining ourselves so that we can be more focused on what God has called us to do, and those things that maybe take up our attention or that divert us from the way can fall away. So this year, during the season of Lent, we will be looking at how we recognize God in our midst, how we recognize Christ's call, how we see the things that we are meant to do and then do them. And the word recognize means to understand something that you have seen before. So when you recognize a person, you're able to recognize them because you've seen them before. Otherwise, you're just meeting them for the first time. Or you might recognize a truth, which means you've encountered it before, but now you understand it in a way perhaps you didn't before, or you remember its significance. So we'll be looking at things we have seen before, people we have seen before, stories we have heard before, and looking for what it is that Christ wants us to recognize, to understand in a new way, something that we have previously encountered. And that means that we'll be having, during the season of Lent, every day there will be a video devotional that will help us, hopefully, to recognize some aspect of our life of faith within the objects of our homes. So things we see every day, or that we could see every day, because we probably all have them, or at least most of them, in the house. And then on Sundays, we'll be hearing stories that invite us deeper into the truths that Jesus has been illuminating, both from the Old and the New Testament, throughout his life. So we'll also be exploring a new kind of Lent study. We will have a weekly study group on Zoom, which you are welcome to join at any time on Wednesdays at 7:30 in the evening. And the Zoom details are posted on our Facebook page. And we'll be studying the people of faith brought forward by a Lent program called Lent Madness, which is sort of a tournament of faithful people. So all of these people of faith over the years obviously have already sort of won their crown, you might say, in sort of old hymn language. But we will be exploring their stories, and then each day you get to vote for one and see how far into the tournament they go, until finally, during Holy Week, we crown the Golden Halo winner, the person who got the most votes throughout the season. So we'll be studying the biographies of those people and the things they did and the experiences they had and the ways that they can teach us about faithfulness. Because sometimes learning from the people of the past is a way that we can better live our faith in the future. So that's our plan for Lent. So today, the first day of Lent, is an important one because it is traditionally the day when we commit ourselves to this journey. When we hear the words that you are dust and to dust you shall return, we recognize our own mortality, that we are not the creator of the universe. We are a part of the creation, and that our existence here is by God's grace, creating us from dust and breathing life into us. And this year, because we have experienced perhaps more dust and ashes than in many previous years, I would also remind everyone that one of the translations that you can hear of Genesis chapter 2 says that God created from the earth, like from the dirt, not just dust and ashes as we usually think, but from the earth. And this is a time of year in springtime in the Northern Hemisphere when a lot of people begin to put their hands in the earth. So if you have a chance to experience the earth, whether in a houseplant or in your garden, then this year I would encourage you, when you touch that earth, to just take a moment to give thanks for the ways that God creates out of that earth and returns us to the earth, that we are a part of this cycle. Our object for today, one of our 40 objects of faith, some of you might remember the BBC had a series several years ago called A History of the World in 100 Objects. So that's sort of my inspiration for this Lent, that we're doing a sort of journey of faith in 40 objects. So today's object is glasses. Now, I normally wear contacts, but sometimes I wear my glasses, and sometimes I actually, like many people, wear glasses with a blue light filter now that I spend more time in front of a computer screen. These are my regular glasses, and you can see they're turning a little bit dark because there's still a bit of sun outside. Today our object is glasses because here at the beginning of the season of Lent, one of the most important aspects of Ash Wednesday is a prayer that asks God for the grace of vision to see ourselves clearly, to recognize the truth of who we are, and to commit then seeing that truth to doing better. So when I don't wear my glasses, I can see only about as far as my computer screen, usually, or whatever is right in front of me. But if I want to see anything out the window, for instance, or across the room, I can't. And I'm sure that's true for many people, although I know some people who have the opposite issue. They can see things far away, but not up close. And these lenses that help correct our vision are a bit like what we're asking for when we're asking God to show us ourselves and the world and God more clearly. We're asking for corrective lenses, not for rose-colored lenses, not even for light blocking lenses, though those can be useful, but for lenses that help us to see in order that we might understand, so that we can live more faithfully. So I want to read today a bit of Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 12, the first 3 verses. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. So today I chose glasses as our object of faith because they are a way that we can think of ourselves properly and we can see the world in its proper way. So Paul says, don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think. Think with sober judgment. So in this Lenten season, we strip away those things that are perhaps important to our status or our ego, and we come back to who we are at the core, which is created and loved by God, filled with the breath of God, and called to love one another and to love God with our whole selves. Paul also invites us to present our bodies as our spiritual worship, which I think gives us a sense of what a Lenten discipline might be about. It isn't about giving up chocolate or anything like that. And it's not about giving up something that we already don't do, right? Like, I'm going to give up waking up at 5 a.m. I can't remember the last time I woke up at 5 a.m. Like, that would be an easy and meaningless thing. But instead, it is about taking on a discipline that brings us in our created selves, made from the earth, into a more, I don't want to say correct exactly, but a more holy relationship, a more righteous, rightly ordered relationship with God. And when we exercise a discipline, whether that is a discipline of prayer, a discipline of exercise, a discipline of thought, disciplining our speech so that we don't say particular things that might immediately come to mind, a discipline of mind, whatever it might be, then we bring our bodies in their wholeness into a closer relationship with God. And when we're close, we can see more clearly. So those lenses that help us to see can also show us the way. So if you wear glasses, I hope that whenever you put them on, or contacts, I hope whenever you put them on that you will offer some thanks to the people who created these things. Did you know glasses only became available about 700 years ago? Before then, people just lived with fuzzy vision. So give thanks for those people, and also give a thought to asking God to show you clearly both where you are falling short and where you are succeeding in your faith journey, because all of us are always a mixture of highs and lows, and Jesus calls us to bring all of that to follow him. So that's my Ash Wednesday thought, the first object in our 40 objects. So I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for the next of our 40 objects, and also to seeing you in our Sunday services and in our Wednesday studies beginning next week. So until tomorrow, peace be with you.